Thanks for coming out tonight, everybody. Welcome to Phoenix Books Burlington in beautiful downtown Burlington, a beautiful spring-like day. Feels like winter never was going to end, but I think it finally has. And we are here tonight to celebrate a local publisher, Green Writers Press, based in Brattleboro. And Dede Cummings is the publisher of record of that organization. And she's here tonight, and it's a really great local resource that we have in our state. And I'm going to let Dede talk all about it, but thank you again so much for coming. Here's Dede Cummings.
Hi, everybody. Great. Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's really an honor to be here and also to celebrate our very own indie bookstore, Phoenix Books. I want to thank them. Right from the beginning, they've supported our endeavor to start a brand new publishing company in the wonderful state of Vermont. We really lead the country in wonderful things like the GMO vote the other day, which is great. And I'm really proud to be a Vermonter, though I'm a Flatlander originally from Rhode Island. I came up here to go to college and stayed a few years ago. I went to college. So the new press, Green Writers Press, is we're here so I can introduce the press to a larger audience and spread the word, because we are very excited to let people know about our press. For years, I worked for very large publishers, including Little Brown and Company in Boston. And last year, I said, why don't I just start my own press? I know how to do all of the things that one needs to know about starting a press. So I did, and it was almost exactly to the day a year ago that I started it. It was actually April 13th. So the new press, I'm introducing it. We are a Vermont-based global publisher. We actually now have a lot of interest in foreign rights. It's incredibly exciting. I'm negotiating with the French language rights for one of our books right now. It's incredible. Yeah. Our mission is to spread a message of hope and renewal and print books in Vermont on recycled paper. It's a simple mission. It's really getting a lot of attention. I just shared the news with Professor John, my dear professor, friend from Middlebury, John Elder, is here tonight, and I told him about, and Greg Delanty's here, and I mentioned that Publishers Weekly is going to do an interview with me on Tuesday, which is incredible. Yeah, so the people are starting to notice us. And, you know, our books are printed in Vermont on recycled paper. Our print-on-demand books are printed through Ingram's, but we are still very supportive of the Vermont printer is printing the bulk of our books right now. They're located in Windsor County in Springfield, Vermont, Springfield Printing Company. They are a family-owned Vermont business. They recycle everything in their plant. It's an incredible place. I love working with them, and they're so supportive of us. In today's world of social media and online transactions, here at Green Writers Press, we remember that your head and your heart need nourishment from the natural world. With that as our credo, we embark on a journey to bring the beauty of the published book as a tactile object into the homes and hands of our readers. And we also embrace the technology of tablet and ebook publishing. We will encourage our buyers to shop local, supporting your local bookstore. And a lot of readers don't realize you can buy your ebooks through the local bookstore as well. So we encourage that. And the IndieBound link is a wonderful resource to find your local bookstore. And the other mantra that we work on here at Green Writers Press is collectively our voices can be heard. The earth is silent and awaits our action. So I'm really happy everybody came here tonight. So the books that we're going to feature tonight are So Little Time, second half. I'm just giving you a little sneak preview. And brand new, about to be released in May, but we're getting a really wonderful preview of The Beavers of Popple's Pond. So we're going to feature those two books tonight. And also, can I grab this? Our brand new, newly released, first in our poetry series, Winter Ready, by Vermont poet Leland Kinsey. It's very exciting to get this book out. This is also a brand new release for us. The official on sale date is May 12th nationally, but it's available now. in Vermont.
Right here.
There you go, right here. Oh yes, everyone, afterwards you can buy books upstairs. It's wonderful. Now, we were really excited. Howard Frank Mosher, many of you know Howard Frank Mosher, the wonderful Vermont novelist, and one of my favorite writers. Out of the blue, after I announced the starting of the press a year ago, Howard sent me an email and he said, I want to be part of this. I want to help you get the press started. And he has been the #1 champion of the press, and I'm so grateful to Howard Frank Mosher. It's really amazing. He couldn't be here this evening, so he sent me this beautiful card of a falling down barn. It says, "Hi, Dede. Congratulations to the best publisher in the United States." So, hang on one sec. So we're going to get them on TV. Ta-da! Here we go. Okay, so all of the people, be careful. Great. So now our very first, you can see the slide here, tantalizing artwork, Patti Smith. I'm going to introduce Patti, the author and illustrator of The Beavers of Popple's Pond. Now, as a publisher, I'm getting wonderful submissions every day in my mail, and it's really hard for me to keep, there are only 3 of us at the press, myself and Robin MacArthur, an editor who also has a career as a singer, and she's a mom. And then we have an intern, but we're very, very busy. We've gotten so many submissions. Patti is somebody, I ran into her after I started the press a year ago, and we were in a stairwell, right?
Before you started the press.
Before I started the press, I said, I want to publish your book. I went and found her, and I said, I just want to publish your book. It's a dream of mine. I'm so excited to introduce.
What book?
Here you are.
So now there's a book. It's her fault, and I have to say it's really strange to be back in Burlington. I was here as an undergrad. Guess when? It was a long time ago. Tom Hudspeth remembers. It was in the early '80s, and the things I remember just driving over here. Fabulous. And it's really nice to be here with all of you who care so much about the earth. This book grew out of my relationship, 6-year relationship now, with a family of beavers that live in the woods behind my house. And it documents the sort of adventures, large and small, that are essentially inevitable when you spend lots of time embedded in one place in nature, especially if it's a beaver pond. Never a dull moment at a beaver pond. So I have chosen to read a little excerpt from a description of what I thought would be my least favorite beaver pond. These beavers move every year from one pond to the next. And so this is from the shores of Lake Dismal. And I'll flip through some of the, I'll get you a different picture. This is a little beaver that was born at Lake Dismal, Dewberry, my favorite beaver ever. On August 10th, I reluctantly abandoned my beaver watching post on the scenic shores of Surprise Pond. The beavers, revealing appalling aesthetic judgment, had moved their new pond works downstream to a spot I called Lake Dismal. The new pond arose where the stream had begun a dam of its own, wedging some debris across a narrow cascade. When the gods are smiling, such a natural dam site will have a broad floodplain upstream and will provide aquatic access to a fresh bounty of woody vegetation. In this case, the stream flowed through a narrow bowl, and most of the trees within it were spruce, hemlock, and red maple, trees generally disdained by these beavers. It may have been the spruces that prejudiced me against their new pond. As a lifelong tree enthusiast, red spruce is the one species I regularly curse. The spruce that grew in close ranks along the new pond shore reinforced this bias. The only way to reach the pond was to thrash through a thicket of rough, dead branches in the understory. The canopy of the trees concealed the sky, and only the occasional croak of a green frog suggested that any creature aside from the beavers would recognize this forested puddle as a pond. By the end of that first evening, however, I found that Lake Dismal had an enchantment of its own. After long evenings enjoying the sky-filled vistas of Popple's Pond and then Surprise Pond, I had forgotten my troglodyte heritage. Somewhere in my lineage must be a people with an affinity for caves, for I've always been attracted to dark enclosed spaces. Once I had settled in for my first evening at Lake Dismal, I shone my bright flashlight down the length of the pond. Several trees canted across the water, and the beavers had already removed the bark from their bases. The bookend reflections of these pale trunks in the still black water created the effect of a tunnel. A barred owl fledgling swooped so low above my head that I could feel and hear the air rush beneath her wings. She perched on a branch above my head and peered down at me, to make sure I knew that swoop had indeed been performed for my benefit. The fringe of down around her head produced the effect of a saintly halo. She was a funny-looking owl. As is typical when beavers move to a new site, their first home was a burrow in the stream bank. In such dens, the entrance is underwater, and the beavers excavate a tunnel that leads up to a dry chamber above the water table. I've surveyed the shores of abandoned ponds and found there were numerous beaver-generated burrows. These are the places where beavers can retreat if their primary lodge is destroyed or rendered inaccessible by ice, flood, or drought. Unbeknownst to me, the entrance to the beavers' new home was right next to my seat on the bank. There in the brook just below me, the beaver family emerged. Willow and Bunchberry, those are the parents, came ashore to eat. Ducky, a 2-year-old now, stopped next to me on a pass downstream and scratched her belly before proceeding. She returned in a moment, towing a branch from a sugar maple that had been felled into the pond. She climbed up on a stump across the stream from me and began to eat. Snowberry, the new baby, who had been deep in the maple branches with her father, decided this would be a good time to pester her older sister. As she swam by, I noticed a beaver of the same size right behind her. Those sneaky beavers had hidden a second kit from me for a month. Soon the entire family had gathered in this narrow stream, and the confinement of the space added to the intimacy of the night. All of the beavers soon became very accustomed to my presence. Willow and Bunchberry often left the pond to greet me when I began floundering through the spruces. The need to step over beavers while ducking branches made the pond approach even more challenging. Those 2 beavers were now so relaxed that they would lean against me while I ate. The 2 babies, I call them both Snowberry since I couldn't tell them apart, did not yet leave the security of aquatic environs, but they soon became expert at bobbing for the apples I tossed into the water for them. This is no easy feat, as all who are old enough to have participated in an old-fashioned apple bob can imagine. Ah, yes, it's true, the beavers are allowed to use their hands, but when your paws barely reach your chin, they can't be considered tremendous asset. During their first exciting encounters with apples, they would swim up and leap on them. If they managed to submerge the apple in the process, they would dive in pursuit. The apple would pop up again, while the bubble trails marked the kit's underwater efforts to locate the runaway loot. They finally learned to sneak up on the apples, extend their stubby paws cautiously to either side, and then with a quick grab, pull it within biting range. The only time I saw them leave the water was when they climbed into the branches of trees felled into the pond. They pretended an interest in the edible parts of the tree, chewing bark as they clambered about. They didn't fool me with their I'm a serious beaver act, though. One of the Snowberries climbed onto a horizontal trunk that one of the adults was chewing. The trunk bounced with the efforts of the big beaver, and the roly-poly baby straddled it as if it were a mechanical bull. She was bucked into the pond 3 times, and each time scrambled back into the saddle. Once the bugs had stopped biting, I could sleep beneath the spruces on the shores of Lake Dismal. The beavers remained active all night, and Willow sometimes woke me as she clambered over my legs on a quest for stray beaver treats. Sometimes I would hear something rummaging around near my head and would turn on the light to find Ducky beside me asking for an apple. In mid-September, a dome of sticks and mud began to rise steadily on the bank above their burrow. Peering through this thick lattice work with my flashlight one night, I saw one of the Snowberries, glossy and dry, peering at me from within. The beavers had dug up through the ceiling of their burrow and expanded their living quarters into this new lodge. My sleeping location, oh, this was great, was right next to one of the beaver runways, short paths that they used to build up speed as they worked on their home renovation project. Throughout the night I heard the patter of webbed feet as the beavers, embracing loads of sticks and mud, rising onto their hind feet, hustled as far up the dome as they could before collapsing. Oh my God. Sorry. That's my brother. Now, where was I? This is exciting beyond words. I can't tell you. Yes, hustled as far up the dome as they could before collapsing. Once the cargo was deposited, they pushed it into place with their paws, rocking forward and back to take full advantage of their bulk. Larger sticks were worked into the structure one by one and later chewed off from the inside as the beavers shaped their chambers. As autumn progressed, I looked forward to watching the lodge and winter food cache grow, the water level rise. True, the stars would be few and vistas uninspiring, but I had no worries that evenings at Lake Dismal would be dull. This is the map of all of the various ponds that they've created in the years that I've been studying them. I went through them all. Oh, thanks.
How many years total have you been studying?
6 years with these beavers. And the book also includes lots of stories of other animal encounters I've had. And also
Is these are the little dark spots that are marked?
those are the ponds,
Those are the
just the
ponds.
different ponds, not to scale or anything. I'm also a wildlife rehabilitator, so I have lots of other curious interactions.
Did you do the illustrations?
We have a map in the
Yes.
book.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
We added the map quite later in the process.
Yes, we did.
We need a map.
Oh,
So, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the book is filled with illustrations. Can I show them? Oh, yes, my favorite. The possum.
Yeah.
Possums are great.
Raccoons, possums, lots of birds, Terrible Jack.
Terrible Jack.
The moose who
Uh,
fell in love with Patti.
Very good.
Some of our other books, Lasting Words, A Guide to Finding Meaning Toward the Close of Life. This book is out nationally, and it was very favorably reviewed in Library Journal. It was so exciting, and it's incredible. It's a really wonderful book. I recommend this if, we're all aging, and our parents are, and it's just an amazing book. It just helps you on the journey. We're offering it to hospices for half price. And we had a grant for $1,000, so we gave away 50 books to hospices all around the United States. So we have a nice grant going for that. This was the very first book we published, the Bird Book. And it is absolutely gorgeous. This book is out and available for children. I want to just show you the loon, one of my favorites. Vermont artist Brian Cohen and his wife Holiday Eames did the couplets. Thank you. So now I get to enter. That's upstairs. Excellent. So it's so great to be here. And again, I want to thank everyone and Patti Smith for her wonderful book that is just out. So it's a lot like giving birth to a book. It really is. And I think as a publisher, I'm just as involved, maybe not quite as involved as Patti or Leland Kinsey with their wonderful work. But I feel such a bond to everyone I'm working with. And we're really creating a community, so it's very important that we spread the word. So before we do the So Little Time presentation, I want to tell you our exciting news. We started a magazine. It will be an online magazine, and it will also be a print magazine. And it's called Green Writers Press, or GWP Magazine. And I have asked one of our very first submitters, who is going to be in the magazine, who is a wonderful Burlington, Vermont writer and the founder of the Burlington Writers Project, Peter Biello, to read a short, or half of his short story, which we will be publishing in October. And the magazine it's going to be poetry and short fiction and environmental essays. And we've been getting submissions from all over the world. So it's the first of many magazines. And we even just the other day got a submission in Spanish about the burning of a river in Argentina. It's amazing. So I'm going to have it translated. So it's really exciting. So I'm going to invite Peter Biello to read a short section from his upcoming story called The Stove, which I love, and it's going to be in our magazine.
Thank you, Dede, and I'm so glad to hear that this is coming out. I didn't know it was coming out in October, but that's thrilling. I had a long time to wait and see how this looks. It's going to be great. So if you've heard me on VPR, you may have from time to time heard my Massachusetts accent come out. So it's coming out in full force here for this story, which is based in my hometown of Fall River. And though it's fiction, it sort of draws on the people I knew growing up. And forgive the language that is not suitable for children. Are there any children here? No, there are children. A lot of us. Okay, sorry then. So this is the stove. Mom used to say the full moon made patients crazy. Once, when I was 10 years old, she came home with a black eye. The full moon rose, and an otherwise peaceful patient seemed to suddenly go mad and clocked her with a full bedpan. On the next full moon, a woman sunk her dentures into the soft muscle of her forearm while she was changing her IV. Mom and her fellow nurses used to switch shifts so they wouldn't get stuck working the full moon shift 2 months in a row. The moon is full tonight, and it's exactly 2 years and 10 months since she died. There's a concrete square on the sidewalk outside the hospital where Mom would gather with her coworkers and smoke. Nurses don't smoke there anymore. They have to smoke on the loading dock. I step on that square every day, once with each foot and never on the crack, as I head to my job as a cook in the hospital cafeteria. I've heard Western cultures see time as a line, just another thing in motion that stays in motion. But in the Eastern world, time is a circle, and history comes back again, whether we're aware of it or not. Coming back to this hospital feels circular to me, so I'm keeping an open mind about the shape of history. When I clock out, I see Dad has called my cell phone. "Hey, Brad," his message says, "I need you and Jay to help me lift something tomorrow. Give me a call." I stop at home, where I live with Dad in the house we all used to share, but he's not there, so I head down to Burra Alta. He's at the bar talking to a woman who went heavy on the lipstick and perfume. "There's my oldest," he says to the woman, who's now obviously taking inventory of the ways I resemble my father. Dark eyes, black hair, short with broad shoulders. Check, check, check. "Speak to your brother lately?" "No. He's been incommunicado." "I'll check with him." "Is he pissed?" "Not that I know of." "Well, here's the deal. I need you and your brother to help me move the living room stove." The stove, we always called Mom's stove, sits on a brick platform in the corner of the living room, opposite an actual fireplace, which made me wonder how cold things used to be back in the late 1800s when the house was built. When Jason and I were growing up, Mom used to sit in that chair while the fire roared and smoke and drink coffee and play handheld video blackjack or poker games. She hated the cold and seemed engaged in a permanent struggle to raise her body temperature. "Jason won't like that idea," I say. Dad looks puzzled, or pretends to. "Why not?" "It's just Jay." "Well, it's just a stove." "And I agree with you," I lie, because even though I'll be sad to see it go, it's his stove and none of my damn business what he does with it. But to Jason, it's probably more than that, I say. "Well," Dad says, and he looks ready to add something else about Jason, but he catches the eye of the perfumed lady. "Oh, I'm sorry, I let your drink run out." He puts his hand on her forearm and then signals the bartender, "Knob Creek on the rocks, please." I have a beer with him and then leave, and it seems that even from the parking lot I can still smell her and see my father's hand caress her arm. 15 minutes later, I'm sitting on Jason's couch, reaching for the pipe in his outstretched hand. I watch the smoke drift out the open third-floor window. "Dad wants our help moving the stove." "Where?" "Just out, I guess." "To, like, the shed?" "Maybe. Why, you want it?" Jason waves his arm over his small room. In one corner sits an enormous bookcase stacked full of books and DVDs. Piles of video games surround the TV, which sits on an old dog crate. On the coffee table, there's a copy of Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex, with a copy of High Times keeping his page. "Oh yeah, I'll just put it right in the middle of my abundance of empty space." "Not sure how we'd get it up here anyway," I say. Jason points to the pipe I'm holding, and I give it back to him. He lights, inhales, holds. "Unless it grows tits, he'll discard it," he says as he blows smoke, and then he coughs. It's a hard, dry, wheezing cough, and I remember the way Mom coughed, like her lungs were full of packing peanuts. "You ever think of just baking brownies?" I ask. "He might just discard it even if it does grow tits. There's always another set of tits." "You know, if you made brownies, you wouldn't have to—" "I'm not much of a cook," he interrupts. then inhales, and holds it for as long as he can. Jason doesn't drive. He won't even ride shotgun. When he was 16, Mom took him to an empty parking lot for a driving lesson, and he had a panic attack and drove into one of 5 light posts, and he's been terrified of riding up front or anywhere ever since. Next morning, I idle outside his apartment. He comes down wearing his boots and a gray sweatshirt with tight cuffs that make his hands look tiny. He gets into the back seat. "Hey, can you blast the heat back here?" I crank the heat up and tilt the vents. "Thanks. You need coffee?" "Nah, I'm good." We pass the Dunkin' Donuts without stopping. "Hey, what's with the second sex?" I ask. "What's wrong with it?" "I saw you reading it." "And?" "All right," I say. I see through my rearview mirror that he's gazing out the passenger side window. "Dad could benefit from a little feminist history," he says. "Dad's grieving," I say. "No excuse." "It's been almost 3 years, though," I say. "It's totally fine for him to see what's out there." Jason shakes his head. "Yeah, now it is." We come to a red light. "What?" "Nothing." Jason stares out the window, then pulls out a joint and puts it to his lips. "Hey, not now, Jay." I see his fingers shake. "Did you find out what he's doing with Mom's stove?" "I haven't talked to him since last night," I say. "What if he's just going to junk it?" he says. "Would you take it?" "I don't have room," I say, and don't change the subject. "What the hell is going on?" "You need to let me smoke." "If I let you smoke, will you tell me?" "Yes, and by all means." The light turns green and we go, and Jay lights up his joint and takes a few puffs. "Do I have to wait until you're high, or can you tell me now?" "Dad fucked a prostitute." I looked in the rearview mirror. Jason is staring at me, his eyes not the least bit kidding. "The woman from last night?" "Who?" "No, probably not. I don't know. Or care who he's fucking now. When we were kids." "What?" "Mom told me." "Mom told you?" "Yes. Like in a dream, Mom told you. She came to you in a dream and she said, 'No, you asshole. I don't get the dreams anymore.' She was alive." I check the speedometer and realize I'm going 20 and a 40. Jason explains that before I dropped out of school to help with Mom, he'd sit with her for hours. "She told me everything," he says. "She stayed with him for us, but he cheated on her his whole life. Some of it he paid for, some of it he didn't." I pull over, take out my cell phone. I'm calling Dad now and canceling. No, he can't know. In the rearview mirror, I see Jason looking nervously from side to side. "I shouldn't have told you. I shouldn't have said anything." And Jason is right. I don't want this information. Dad can't know we know. If we confront him, he'll deny everything and blame it on Mom's drugs or Jason's. If Dad denied it, we'd have to give him the benefit of the doubt. Because why look so hard for a reason to hate your father when all he is, on the surface, is a man grieving his wife? You can tell how long it's been since Dad had a woman in the house by how clean it is. Dishes stacked on the coffee table are like rings in a tree, indicators of passing time. Today, the plates are stacked 7 high, so it's been at least a week. Dad's in the living room when we arrive. "Jay, boy, how are you?" he says, holding out his hand to shake. For a beat, Jay doesn't shake it, and the whole room freezes. But then he does, and the room warms up a little. "You're a hard guy to reach. Did you get my message?" "Yeah, I've been busy." "Oh, gotcha. Well, I'd like to get rid of this here. Your brother told you, I assume." "What are you doing with it?" "I've got a buyer in Tiverton wants it. Says it's an antique." "I want it," Jason says. "Where are you going to put it?" "It's my business where I put it." "But the guy offered me $1,000. I'll give you $1,200. Dad puts his hands on his hips. "It's not a bidding war. You want it, you can have it. I just don't know where you... I'll find a place, and I'll pay you." "Jay, the money's not important." "What are you doing with the space?" I ask. "Well, I think I'll open up the room a little," Dad says. "I'd like to get rid of these couches, maybe get something new. Clean it up here a bit. Make it more modern. Claire keeps bugging me to do something with it." Claire, a.k.a. old what's-her-name. "I haven't seen her here," I say. "She doesn't come by much," Dad says. "So, hey, how about moving this stove?" Jason says. "You in a hurry, Jay?" "You wanted us to move it, right?" Dad nods. "Yeah, please." We put the stove on a rolling platform and move it to the garage, where we use Dad's pneumatic lift to get it into the truck. As we move it, I can smell the ashes inside the tray, which I now realize we should have emptied. Dad hasn't used it since Mom died. Then it occurs to me that Mom must have burned whatever those ashes used to be. Are we taking this to your place, Jay? Dad asks. Yes. Ride with me then? I'll go with Brad. On the way to his place, Jason says, I don't know how you can live there. I need to, I say. I'm saving money for school. I can't be in that house without thinking of Mom. I know. She took such good care of that place. Like, perfect care. I know. And when she was alive, he never did one damn thing to help her. Now, doesn't that piss you off? I agree with you, but don't get all diplomatic with me here. Be honest. Does it not piss you off that Dad basically made a slave out of Mom while he fucked whores all the time? I've only known this information like 2 hours, Jay. I can't even begin to. You don't need to process it, he says. If you loved Mom at all, watch it, Jay. You wouldn't even have to think about it. You're out of line here, Jay. You just fucking know. I slam on the brakes and the car skids to a stop. What the fuck, he says. I stare out the window. Traffic has picked up, but only a little. You need to stop talking and remember that I love both Mom and Dad. Still, Jay says, after what I just told you? Yes, after what you just told me. Then you're fucked up. Fine, I'm fucked up. I'm sorry, you're going to have to bleep like all of this. When we get to his apartment, Jason opens the gate and climbs the stairs while I stay put. Dad shows up 15 minutes later and parks behind me. Dad and I put the ramp against the tailgate. Where's your brother? He ran upstairs. Was he having an attack? Of assholeitis. I honk the horn of the truck and Jason comes down and the three of us lower the stove onto the sidewalk. And now that it's sitting there, the three of us look at the stove. Well, good luck with this, I said to them. Dad and Jason look at me. Where are you going? I got to work in 2 hours, I say. I need a rest. Dad furrows his brow. You and Dad can handle this, right? Actually, I need to get going, Dad says. Why don't you stay and help Dad, I say. Jason has something he wants to tell you anyway. Brad, you better. I'm out. And before I shut the door of my car, I hear Dad say, what's he talking about? And to get the rest of it, you'll have to subscribe to the journal.
Thanks, Todd. Gotta save energy here. I tried. Thank you so much, Peter. It's so exciting. It's really great. We have a lot of wonderful writers here from Burlington Writers Workshop. Raise your hands. Oh, look at that. Wonderful, wonderful organization. I think it's one of the best in the country. It's really exciting to be a part of it. So the next book we're going to feature tonight is So Little Time. And this book, I'm going to read the short blurb on the back and the wonderful endorsement from Publishers Weekly. Taking action requires courage and risk. Our hope is that each person who reads this book will be inspired to take action in such a way that it reverberates in the community around them. Just as this book is made up of individual artists, it is each of our individual actions coming together that will create the change we need. Proceeds benefit 350 Vermont and other environmental organizations. Patti's book will adding donations to the Bonnievale Environmental Education Center in Brattleboro, Vermont. So we're donating around the world as well. And 350 Vermont is unique. The start of the international organization 350 right here in Vermont, Middlebury College, my alma mater. Bill McKibben is not here with us, but in this book he wrote The Envoy. At the end of the book, it's absolutely beautiful. And 350, we've got a table here to sign up. And there's also a newsletter sign up for Green Writers Press on that table over there under the banner. So if you have time after, take a look and get involved in 350. It's a wonderful organization. And I'm really honored that we are making some donations. We actually gave our first donation this year already. So it's great. I'd love to introduce the poet Greg Delanty to tell you a little bit about the book, and we're going to be reading just a few short poems from the book to give you a taste of the book. And yeah, well, John first. Yes, oh, great, okay. So when you see the book, you see it's a gorgeous spread of the Connecticut River here. It's New Hampshire. And then open it up. The very first forward in the forward in the book, after this lovely title page with a photo from a First Nations photographer, Neil Louie, who's from the Wudang band of the First Nations. And we sent them 6 copies to the tribal office, and they love it. And we're working on making some donations there. So Neil has some amazing photos. The photos are fabulous. I don't want to underestimate the power of the photography and let the poets steal the show. The photographers are awesome. And we had a photographer who was going to speak tonight from Montpelier, Annie Tiberio Cameron, but she couldn't make it because she's got the flu, because I really wanted a photographer to speak. Right. So I would love to introduce John Elder, former professor emeritus of Middlebury College. And John will speak. He is a nature writer. The second person who came out to support the press, I would say, right after Howard Frank Mosier, was John Elder, and it's with great honor that I introduce John. And I think his books are for sale as well. His book, Reading the Mountains of Home, did I say that right? Is one of my favorite books. It sits on my bedside table, and I highly recommend it if you want to learn about not just Vermont, but one man's journey to learn about land and culture and spirit and self. John Elder.
Well, thanks, Dede. I would really just like to say congratulations to Green Writers Press and to Greg Delanty for this really important project. The understanding that poetry and art are powerful resources for the work that 350.org is trying to pursue. That basically this is not a technological problem. It's not even fundamentally a political problem. It's a cultural problem. It has to do with our values, with our appetites and our commitments. And poetry and art and photography speak to it. And the vision of the press and the vision of the book are such worthy ones. So I thank you both. I'll just read very briefly. I wrote a little introduction. I'll read the last paragraph of the introduction and one poem, because there's so many things to be read here tonight by so many wonderful writers. So the foreword ends, poetry both catalyzes and distills our human potential for affiliation with the world. It is, like the extravaganza of evolution itself, a process of ceaseless embodiment. Through combining sensual details so fine, they seem to have been observed through a botanist's hand lens. With the vaulting reach of figurative language, it reveals that the whole world is always there, around us and within us. The activating power of poetry resides equally in its living body of sound, repetitive cadences, forests of consonants, and the vowels that echo over them like coyote song at moonrise in the Green Mountains. Poetry's gathering incantatory force can quicken our pulses and our breath. It can prompt us to stand up from our chairs and walk out the door back into a familial world that has been waiting for us. And just as one of many beautiful illustrations of how poetry can work to deepen our sense of affiliation and to strengthen our sense of commitment, I'll read a quiet little powerful poem by William Stafford called The Well Rising. The well rising without sound, the spring on a hillside, the plowshare brimming through deep ground everywhere in the field, the sharp swallows in their swerve, flaring and hesitating, hunting for the final curve coming closer and closer, the swallow heart from wing beat to wing beat, counseling decision, decision. Thunderous examples. I place my feet with care in such a world.
John is taller than me. Is this right? Is this right? And so is Dede. No. John talked there about the things that we're facing as cultural difficulty and so forth. I actually think that probably the main difficulty, apart from trying to outwit and change the kind of money world and the build-up of the carbon fossil world, pun there, it's Freudian slip, carbon facile, except that it's not so facile, is that it's really a huge, for me, emotional problem for everybody to be able to feel that you can make a change, how to deal with such a huge problem that human beings have never faced before, and we've got so little time. And it's an extraordinary thing that we find ourselves in, and it's kind of even extraordinary that we're so calm about it. Everybody knows it, actually, now at this point. Not everybody, but, it's kind of in our system now. We're almost accepting it, and politicians in general, and our leaders, and our academic world, and intellectual world are being absolutely hopeless in general. And it's partly because they're set up in old ways of thinking and old ways of power and old ways caught in the business world, political world, and so forth. You don't need to hear me saying this. But for me, what art is, and specifically here, poetry and the photographs, is a way of dealing with this emotionally, of being able to cope with the huge problem. Because otherwise I have students and myself, we're overwhelmed. It's just too frightening. It's too much. Beyond anything that we've ever seen before, of all the frightening things. And I don't want to compare suffering. The death of the Native American world, the death of the Jewish people in the Second World War, Ireland, I don't know, any way you name it. Do you understand? But this is just too big. So I think that the art world is a way of us kind of coming to terms in ourselves with trying to change. And I'll just quote, for a year, I myself have been an activist for years as well. I mean, I did, ever since I was a young fella, I laid down in front of the tanks in Mount Langen in 1980-something, and so forth in Germany. But also here, I did recently, and I always took part with John and myself and Bill and so many others, Huck. In the walk, we went from the Frost House, when it was called Step It Up, I think at that point when Bill started it, the movement really. And up to now, I did civil disobedience outside the White House at the time. And I say those things it's just my way of coping with it all. Do you understand? It's not, I can't be in the world anymore. I can't have as I tell my students, I can't have my beers and my wine at night. And I do have to have my beers and my wine at night, I'm afraid. I can't enjoy them unless I do something. And my doing something is being an activist, but also my poems, since I'm preoccupied. My father died, I'd write a poem. I'm preoccupied with the world the way it is, I write a poem. There's no difference. There's no such thing anymore as a public or private poem. When you publish a poem, it's public, private, subject matter or public subject matter. And it's my way of coping. And I just wanted to quote from, I also started with two or three others, the environmental major at St. Michael's, and taught on it, which I found very difficult for various reasons, because the big problem is to teach a subject via the ineffable power of art that you can't really explain the beauty of it. It's the renewing quality of it. And that's what's marvelous about art. It's not fact. It kind of opens up metaphorically in so many other different ways into us that kind of enter our sort of empathy genes and so forth, molecules, so that we can be all right. And also, we're going to wipe ourselves out at some point, or something will. But it would be great if we could wait another while, another few 1,000 years anyway. Do you know what I mean? But anyway. So I just want to quote, when I was teaching, I had to look at a lot of environmental articles and books, and Phyllis Windle, to me, kind of hit it really. She wrote, Phyllis Windle, in a great article, she wrote, our mourning rituals could celebrate. Sorry. She said, well, I say it's important that we face our situation and suffer it so we can live in the world in a healthier way. Phyllis Windle, in The Ecology of Grief, writes about the shock we feel at realising our situation and suggests ways we can tackle it. And then she says, our mourning rituals could celebrate too. I mean, it is a celebration too. And affirm our faith in the processes of ecology and evolution. We could note the remaining beauty of the earth, the birth of new species or subspecies, and the grand rhythms of the biochemical circles. And the fact that I always said that we didn't destroy the place already. We're just poor species trying to survive. And we can't catch up with ourselves in ways that we have progressed that are not healthy, like power. Anyway, I'm just going to read 3 little poems. This is what So Little Time is so much about, and I'm going to read 3 short poems. I'm going to ask people to try and stick to 5 minutes, now that I've gone over 5 minutes. I wanted to say that I asked everybody here. It was originally that it was supposed to be built around my poems, and I wanted to ask other people. I know. It was supposed to be 60 pages with my poems and photographs, and I said, no, let's ask other people. And, of course, Dede will tell you, like, there was new people every day. Friends.
They started to call us and email us. They wanted to be part of it.
Yeah, well, but most of them I asked in this. I mean, because I wanted the poems to be good as well. And people were turned down. Because it's important that art is not sublimated or secondary to this, to the subject. Because then the art is no good, and then the subject we must be on a soapbox, you know. But it is the beauty of the entering underneath the ink or the photographs, perhaps the energy of the Big Bang originally, as an articulation of, I hate that word, articulation, as a kind of a sensing of the original energy. Some people might call it God. I don't. I'm an unbeliever. But, you know, I think there are ways into it so that we're all right again. And then we can tackle in our own life, do the things we can, be active, as you're doing, do our civil disobedience, do everything, and then enjoy ourselves at night. Because we have a right to enjoy ourselves, to be all right in the world and not be overwhelmed. And so many children and young people are overwhelmed. It's terrible for them. And so this is the art thing. Sorry for the old speech, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to start with a poem as it happens, actually no, I'll start with a poem to my child, and I'm going to finish with a Seamus Heaney poem. It was interesting, I didn't realise actually tonight, Seamus was a great friend, and he stayed here and lived with us, or stayed with us twice in our own house, and I loved Seamus, and he was the most important poet in many ways in the world because of his character and because of he was really a kind of a secular saint. And he was behind everything, and we were great friends, and he wrote great things about. He was lovely. He was just beautiful. But as it happened tonight, no, it didn't occur to me. You talked about the 13th of April, and you said the 13th. That's his birthday. So it just occurred to me that I will read a Seamus poem to finish up my little segment. All right, and it's a good omen. Seamus is not here now anymore, but he is, and it's a good omen because he was a great man. There you are. The alien to a child in the ultrasound. All the words are real, and so forth, and the notions of black matter and so forth. The alien. I'm back again, scrutinizing the Milky Way of your ultrasound. Scanning the dark matter, the nothingness that now the heads say is chock-a-block with quarks and squarks, gravitons and gravitini, photons and photinos. Or Sprout, who art there inside the spacecraft of your ma, the time capsule of this printout hurling and whirling towards us. It's all daft on this earth. Or alien who art in the heavens, or Martian, or little green man. We're anxious to make contact, to ask questions about the heavendom you hail from, to discuss the whole shebang of the beginning and end, the pre-Big Bang on time, before you forget the why and lie of thy first place, and, our friend, to say welcome, that we mean no harm. We die for you even, that we pray you're not here to subdue us, that we'd put away our ray guns, missiles, attitude, and share our world with you, little big head, if only you stay. I'll read the Seamus poem next, and then I'll finish up with... Seamus's poem is Hoffen, about an iceberg seen from the plane. The three-tongued glacier has begun to melt. What will we do? They ask. When boulder milt comes wallowing across the delta flats, and the miles-deep shag ice makes its move. I saw it, ridged and rock-set from above, undead grey-gristed earth pelt, aeon scruff, and feared its coldness that still seemed enough to ice-block the plane window, dimmed with breath, deep-freeze the seep of adamantine tilth, and every warm, mouth-watering word of mouth. And then the last poem I'll read is Patient, a short poem. Thank you. The snow has melted clean off the mountain. It's winter still. Yet another indication that Gaia is in trouble, that things aren't sound. The Rocky Mountain top shines like the bald head of a woman after chemo who wills herself out of her hospital bed to take in the trees, the squirrels, the commotion in the town. Sit bare in a dive. Smile at the child ogling her shining head, wishing it didn't take all this dying to love life.
Thank you so much, Greg Delanty. Greg has really made this book come alive. I'm so grateful for his help. So a few of the poets are going to read, so I'd love to have something now from Antonella Borra, one of the poets in our book, a professor at UVM. Maybe he will read in Italian.
Hi. Yes, I'm Italian. I write in Italian. I'm also American now, as of January, so thank you. So I'll write the Italian first, and then I'll write the English translation of the poem that Blossom S. Kirschenbaum made. So, il dodo. Voi pensate soltanto ai dinosauri, così dite che non è colpa vostra, ma il tilacino, il quagga, l'alca, l'uro, il visone marino, l'Ape ornis, il delfino dello Yangtze, l'antilope azzurra, i moa, il gufo faccia bianca e tutti quelli di cui resta solo un eco, un nome, un osso, dei disegni in un museo, come è successo a me? Ve lo dico in parole molto semplici. State attenti. Prima o poi tocca a voi. The dodo. You think only about the dinosaurs. Thus, you say that it is not your fault. But what of the Tasmanian tiger, the plains zebra, the auk, the auroch, the sea mink, the elephant bird, the Yangtze River dolphin, the blue antelope, the wingless moa, the wide-faced owl, and all those of whom there remains only an echo, a name, a bone, some drawings in a museum, as is the case with me? I tell you in very simple words, take care. Sooner or later, it is your turn. Thank you very much.
I'd like to invite Burlington poet Sharon Webster to come up and read. Thank you.
Can I leave it where it is? Okay. Yeah, thanks to everyone who worked on this and all the rest of Green Writers, and I hope it thrives and blooms. Resistance. You are still here. It is nightfall. From the window you can see the leaves are no longer leaves, but black sponges, damp against the draining sky. You are safe here. The pines are a sturdy fortress against the strong north wind. They move constantly like strange brooding echoes. The house sits firmly in the overgrowth of centuries. It is fine here. You imagine mice, worms, squirrels, and hundreds of watching insects, while the dark comes down like a lid. The woods wait, cave upon cave of shadow and silence. You can be sure here. There is no reason to believe that at any moment it will all come apart, burst into switchblades, bright and ready to cut. But you do. I have a little one of Grace, the late great Grace Paley, environmentalist and all-around great person. And it's called Signs. A man hung a sign above the town. It said, suffering, in small letters, meaning, I thought, modest suffering. This made another man angry, and he had a sign printed in large letters, meaning, I thought, it said hope, meaning, I thought, immodest hope. Then acres of coffee or cocoa were laid like foreign weather on the fields of maize, and rice under the sun. Excuse me, the desert waited. The desert waited. Give it proper emphasis. Thank you so much.
I'd like to see if poet Ralph Culver could come up and read from the book. Ralph came up from Montpelier area. Tomorrow night we'll be at Poem City at the Kellogg Hubbard Library, also doing a So Little Time reading. But Ralph is here tonight and tomorrow night as well. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I didn't come up from Montpelier.
Oh.
I live in Burlington.
Oh.
I'm a real Burlingtonian. Oh, Dede, thank you. Thank you all for coming. It's just, it's such a wonderful book. It really is. I had the good fortune to read on a triple bill last night with Sidney Lee and Daniel Lusk. And I asked Sidney, our state poet laureate, if he would be able to make it this evening, and he looked at me and got sort of cross-eyed. He's like exhausted because he goes and reads everywhere. He could barely stand up yesterday to get up to the podium. So I'm going to read first a poem of, he has a couple of poems in here. This one is one I love very much, called Small Jeremiad. And not a word you run into too often, but if you don't know, it means a lamentation or a prophecy of doom, I think, which comes from Jeremiah. Small Jeremiad. I killed a catbird once when I was young. I'll claim to this day I didn't really mean to. Just noticed him and flung a thoughtless stone. I've done much worse, so why would this live on? My cracked LP is Mulligan meets Getz. I killed a catbird once when I was young, but why, awake at dawn, should I have turned from husky saxes chanting that old feeling to some poor bird at whom I flung a stone? There seems reason enough. A catbird dropped to our lawn as I chose my old-fashioned record. A rare bird here in northern New England. And though I've cast no stone, I'm sunk in lamentation. Things I have done, ones I have left undone. And that old feeling, I killed a catbird once when I was young. My life's the only life I'll ever own. I own it all when memory flies in. I killed a catbird once when I was young. I noticed him and flung a thoughtless stone. My contribution to the anthology is called For the Last Catamount, and it was actually written a long time ago. It was only fairly recently that some official agency somewhere declared that the eastern mountain lion is extinct. But, you know, I could see years ago where things were going. For the last catamount, the round, descending eye of fire narrows down the Gunsight Valley. A hawk hangs perfectly still, then sheers toward the river. Day heavy, lazing on a warming rock, the gold head of teeth and thick-lidded opals shifts, yawning under the sun's attentions. Her paws go soft now. She dozes. Skirling black flies and the quick water's reassuring purl meld to a rustle of parting growth. She recognizes what can only be summoned in dreams, his likeness, driven from and nearing her. He stands in wait by the trees. Night and hunger, one being, will fall soon enough, patiently hunting the mouth of the river to follow the valley upstream. She wakens without expectation. Water, kill, sleep, the passing light, the labors of a daily birth in a world of endings. Thank you.
Where's Buff? Buff Lindau will now read her poem from the book. It's interesting, Ralph referred to it as an anthology, and I refer to the book as a community. Or, you know, it's funny. An anthology sounds sort of finite to me. I love the idea of it as a community.
Buff Lindau. I met Buff through Greg, and I'm honored she's in our book. Burlington, Montpelier?
Burlington, yeah. No, and I am really honored to be in the book. It's a beautiful book, and Greg made it happen, and Greg's poetry is quite wonderful, and he's chosen and found some wonderful, wonderful poetry, and the photography. It's really a wonderful book, and it's great that Dede made it happen and is giving some of the money and making it a gift to 350.org. So my poem is about gardening. I have poems that are more cataclysmic than this about this whole subject that we're trying to deal with, but this is just a backyard gardening poem, and you'll probably recognize the references to some of the erratic and extreme weather Vermont has been suffering. It's called Record Rainfalls. It was written a couple of years ago. Record rainfalls. On hold, the vegetable garden we prepared, weeding, smoothing, planting rows of zinnias and cosmos, tomato plants ready to take off, pepper plants, cukes, and more, all on hold, rotting in the wetness we fear. But that's the least of it. The flood watch, flood watch, flood watch makes wet seedlings count little. What about rushing streams that slide houses off their perch on the side of a mountain, crack open gaps in highways, tumble trees over roads? Record rains already for May and June, and now more. That patter on the roof through the night and into today, on and on and on, relentless, sinister in its innocent tone.
So great. And to follow Buff's wonderful gardening poem, Leland Kinsey will read from his book. Well, Leland has two poems in the book. You read one of yours?
I think I'll read from this.
Perfect.
Different.
And excellent.
I do have two poems in so little time, and I do want to say that having used recycled paper obviously does not diminish the quality of the books, because that book and the book that Dede put out of my work are handsome, just physically handsome books. I remember I did that in Sunday school with my Bible once, and the teacher said, "You've dropped your sword." I would like to just read two poems from this, and not to, pointing is simply the process of replacing grout in masonry when it fails. The first poem in the book is titled Pointing the Chimney, and I mention it here. This poem is titled Chimney Swifts. Pointing the chimney, I startled, almost off the roof. Up shot from the flue's mouth like shrapnel from mortar, flew dozens of swifts, and flew higher like flinders from an exploding shell. Once the optical illusion of the alternate wing beat ceased, they soared. Their tight cigar-like bodies and boomerang wings whirling in outside loops, Imelman turns, stalls, nosedives, hunting and eating on the fly. Then, since they cannot perch, ignoring me, they dove like dropped stones back down the flue's mouth, but en masse looked like smoke returning to where I could not see them in the dark well. I could hear their scratching small claws and bristly bracing tails, the small sound and tiny echo of their twittering calls. I have sometimes found a nestling in the ashes fallen, and no way to replace it. But these were post-breeders in some numbers, colonizing my creosote-stained, coal-spalled chimney that I'm trying to keep standing. The birds will migrate soon from this narrow room, this edifice I serve, which serves us well. I'll clean the hard and ashy residues of last year's fires. The stiff brushes for this work will also scrape away the few spit and twig crescents that, like fragile boats, floated their seasonal small white egg and nestling cargo over depths the living never plumbed. And this one is titled Threatening Winter. Most of the poems, or many of the poems in this, are about those jobs that are required from now until winter to prepare for winter. But this is going back to my childhood somewhat. And this mentions something that we didn't even know about, or it just hints at the idea of nuclear winter. Threatening winter. When I was a boy, a jet fighter fell out of the sky less than a mile from home. The pilot flew because of warnings from Toul in the long cold that threatened a winter we did not even know about. When the engine was stricken and failed, the pilot bailed and parachuted into an elderly couple's pasture. He showed up at the door, badly burned. They drove him to the local hospital in their Lark. He told the couple his name, but asked them not to tell. They didn't know if from shame or secrecy. The Air Force, who came in great trucks with heavy equipment to excavate the crater, announced in local radio spots that all souvenirs must be returned. So our school bus, a woman's station wagon hired by the town, stopped one morning so an 8th grade boy could toss the car trunk-sized piece of aluminum fuselage skin we'd been sitting tightly with onto the truck's bed, already piled with landing gear, wingtips, ailerons, unrecognizable fragments, and a muddy canopy from a neighbor's barnyard where it had struck but not killed his best bull. Luck of some sort. Another boy's parents made him return a machine gun barrel, but he kept a few rounds. He'd used to ride his St. Bernard to school, would sick him on us. One girl badly chewed. The town selectman had the dog put down, buried him up in my uncle's field for some reason. Boy said he was going to get a functioning gun and deal with those who'd cost him his dog. My family had been drawn out that night by an odd whine we couldn't locate until we saw the flash rise beside the road to a nearby pond. The lower sky turned red, like when our upper neighbor's house and barn burned, or like when my grandparents' house and barn burned, or like when our lower neighbor's barn burned, or how it might have looked out my window if I'd risen to watch our own barn burn. But this flash was followed seconds later by a clap that would have put an end to thunder. And, as with lightning, we could estimate the distance and began to walk the road toward it. Rockets were part of the armament, we later learned, and local men brought back examples they'd collected as the Air Force gleaned as much as it could before winter set in. Soon, snow covered the crater. The pilot almost fully recovered. We recovered bolts and pieces of skin and frame for years as we hunted and fished in the area where he hoped it likely nothing else would fall. Thank you very much.
I could listen to Leland Kinsey. So we just have a couple more readers. I'd love to invite another professor from Vermont College, from Johnson State. David Kavanaugh is here. He's going to read from So Little Time. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dede. Greg, John, all the other readers, and all of the other poets who are in here, and all the photographers, and all of you for this beautiful community. I'll read two poems from the book, one by Adrienne Rich and one by myself. Adrienne Rich, I regard as one of this country's greatest, actually one of the world's greatest poets, I think I would say. What kind of times are these? There's a place between two stands of trees where the grass grows uphill and the old revolutionary road breaks off into shadows. near a meeting house abandoned by the persecuted who disappeared into those shadows. I've walked there, picking mushrooms at the edge of dread. But don't be fooled. This isn't a Russian poem. This is not somewhere else, but here. Our country moving closer to its own truth and dread, its own ways of making people disappear. I won't tell you where the place is. The dark mesh of the woods meeting the unmarked strip of light, ghost-ridden crossroads, leaf mold paradise. I know already who wants to buy it, sell it, make it disappear. And I won't tell you where it is. So why do I tell you anything? Because you still listen. Because in times like these, to have you listen at all, it's necessary to talk about trees. She's something. Trying to resist the urge to comment a lot. But one of the things I feel, this is such a dark topic in so many ways, but great art makes it bearable. I suppose that's what Greg was talking about too, as a way of coping. This poem is one of mine. It's called All Rise. There are several characters in the poem. One of them is Monsieur Velo. Last time I read this, a bunch of people said, who the heck is Velo? It's a French word for bicycle. One of several French words for bicycle. All rise. Ladies and gents, a case is to be made. We call to your attention. Let the evidence show. We hereby call to the stand. We call Herr Otto. We call King Cole. We call Monsieur Velo. We call Dr. Frack. We call Old Saul. We all do solemnly swear to sell the truth. Herr Otto's on a roll today. He's burning rubber all over. King Cole is in the dumps. He smokes. His clouds hang low. Monsieur Velo spins his wheels. He says, it's very simple. Dr. Frack assures and assures. He knows the drill. Old Saul quietly collects himself. Members of the jury, you have your instructions. The facts are clear. They speak for themselves. Ignore the clamor in the lobby. Take a deep breath if you still can. Don't mind the heat. The choice is yours. We await your verdict. Finally, the sentence, as you know, will be handed down. Thank you.
I'm just always impressed with the power of the words in the book. Maeve, you're going to read? Maeve McBride from 350, Vermont, our fearless leader.
I'm not a writer, so I'm really honored to be here, but I wanted to read a poem by Sherman Alexie, and especially because last week we were graced with two magnificent people in Vermont. Tom Goldtooth, who started the Indigenous Environmental Network, was speaking at St. Mike's, Lakota, and Clayton Thomas Mueller, who is fighting the pipelines that are proposed to go from the tar sands in Alberta and cut across Indigenous lands to the Pacific Ocean. And next Saturday, actually starting on Tuesday, there will be Native Americans and ranchers from Nebraska starting an encampment in Washington, D.C., near the White House. And they are taking a last final stand against the Keystone XL pipeline. And there's a busload of Vermonters. You should all be very proud. 56 people have signed up to go down and spend 2 sleepless nights on the bus to protest this, to join them. So I read from Sherman Alexie's poem. It's called On the Amtrak from Boston to New York City. And I should say I'm a white person reading this poem, and that doesn't make me super comfortable, but I'll try to do it justice. The white woman across the aisle from me says, look at all the history. That house on the hill there is over 200 years old," as she points out the window past me, into what she has been taught. I have learned little more about American history during my few days back east than what I expected, and far less of what we should all know of the tribal stories, whose architecture is 15,000 years older than the corners of the house that sits museumed on the hill. "Walden Pond?" the woman on the train asks. "Did you see Walden Pond?" And I don't have a cruel enough heart to break her own by telling her there are 5 Walden Ponds on my little reservation out west, and at least 100 more surrounding Spokane, the city I pretended to call my home. "Listen," I could have told her, "I don't give a shit about Walden. I know the Indians were living stories around that pond before Walden's grandparents were born, and before his grandparents' grandparents were born. I'm tired of hearing about Don effing Henley saving it too, because that's redundant. If Don Henley's brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers hadn't come here in the first place, then nothing would need to be saved." But I didn't say a word to the woman about Walden Pond because she smiled so much and seemed delighted that I thought to bring her an orange juice back from the food car. I respect elders of every color. All I really did was eat my tasteless sandwich, drink my Diet Pepsi, and nod my head whenever the woman pointed out another little piece of her country's history. While I, as all Indians have done since this war began, made plans for what I would do and say the next time somebody from the enemy thought I was one of their own.
Dede, thank you so much for everything that you've done for this. And again, thanks everybody for coming.